The difference is not that we aren't troubled, not that we aren't aware, not that we don't feel the stress of something coming. It's how we're responding to it by faith.
Stress apparently is a big problem.
Yeah.
What causes stress? Why are people stressed out?
Yeah, I think, when you hear a question like that, you go, oh, well, the stock market, political events, CRT, ethnic issue, what, Joe Biden, whatever. Okay. No. Those can be stressors. Those can actually, be something that brings what's already in our heart to the surface. Because we can never say something like, that wife of mine, she makes me so mad. No, she doesn't. She might provide me the opportunity, but the madness is already in here, and I'm just letting it fly out. So I can't blame anybody for my stress. And this is just going to sound a touch sharp, perhaps. But if we want to take Jesus at his word, when he describes this is why you're stressed out, here's what he says. This is so. All right, let me do this. Guys, I'm calling you up. Yo, brohams. Oh, we can't pay the credit card. We are like, we've got some medical issues. What do you think I should do? We start thinking practically. Well, do you have a good financial investor? Do you have things in tax shelters? Have you been storing up food just in case everything goes down and we need food because of the supply chain? We would be are your guns stocked? That's how we would think on it. Jesus does something wildly different. He says, don't let your heart be troubled, almost a non sequitur. Believe in God, believe also in me. Mm-hmm. Wait, what? Don't be troubled, believe in me. Okay, so if I flip it, if I am troubled, it's because I'm not believing in him. And suddenly, Jesus' words regularly to the disciples identifying that they are of little faith, makes a lot of sense. So I started looking through when Jesus said, you have little faith. So he preaches about it, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, and then as often the case, Jesus he really gives us an object lesson. He actually shows what he's been teaching. And so after Matthew chapter 7, sprinkled throughout the Gospel of Matthew, you see Peter, for instance, he's walking on the water, takes his eyes off of Jesus, blub, what does Jesus say? Oh, you of little faith. The disciples just saw Jesus feed 5,000. Now they're confronted with 7,000. We don't know what we're going to do. And Jesus says, oh, you of little faith. He was telling them that he wasn't calling them a false convert, but he was saying, in the moment, you have a little faith. Now, we can have a little faith in one of two ways. We can have a lot of faith in a puny object, like myself, or I can have a little faith in my big God, and I think that's what he's after. You're believing wrongly. Didn't say they weren't saved. You're not trusting me. You're not believing me. You know what I can do. You know I always deliver on my promises. Trust me. When we get stressed, now I'm not talking about what somebody might be thinking about as clinical depression. I'm talking about the stress that we just feel on a daily basis, that anxiety that we all experience. Jesus is saying, you're just not believing rightly. You have a puny faith. Grow your faith in me. And as we believe in him more, we have anxiety less. The cause of anxiety is a believing problem.
Well said. Todd, this question I think would be good to ask you directly, because I think of you as a guy that is a busy man with many irons in the fire, many things you're involved with and ministries that you impact and Christians you impact. Is there such a thing as godly stress? And two-part question, how do I know if as I'm laboring for and serving the Lord, I'm drifting potentially from stress into sinful anxiety?
Right. Jesus helps us again. What do you know? So Jesus tells the disciples, don't let your heart be troubled. So that's a command. That means if your heart is troubled, it's a sin. Agreed? Mm-hmm. Okay. So then scoot back On the night that Jesus is betrayed, it might be John chapter 12, somewhere 13 maybe, and Jesus knows that Judas is going to betray him. And John says his heart was troubled. Uh-oh, we got a problem. Jesus' heart was troubled. He told them, don't let your heart be troubled, and if you do, it's a sin. We know that our Savior doesn't sin. So that informs us there are different types of troubling. Just like with any emotion, I don't care, you can't name an emotion. I haven't been able to think of an emotion that doesn't have two sides of the coin. It can either be sinful or not. Love can be great. I'm pouring out affection on my wife or my kids, but if I love money, well, then I'm sinning. I can even be jealous sinfully. Oh, man, you guys have a better studio than we do, and I don't think you should have it. I want it. But you start maybe showing attention to my wife, and I'm jealous for her affection, and that's not sinful. So we see that emotions can be sinful or not, and the same thing is true with your heart being troubled. There is an appropriate time to be troubled and an inappropriate time. So when do we see Jesus being troubled? Well, we see a number of times. When a friend was going to betray him. So if you've got somebody who has wounded you, a loved one who has scarred you, yeah, that can be troubling. That just can be heavy and sad, and that's okay. Furthermore, Jesus was troubled thinking about the cross, and his heart was troubled about the coming horrors that he was going to be experiencing. You're confronted with something dangerous, yeah, your heart can be troubled. There's something scary, it can be troubled. The difference is not that we aren't troubled, not that we aren't aware, not that we don't feel the stress of something coming. It's how we're responding to it by faith. If I am responding to it confident in the Lord, you know what? I've got something coming up. Whew, it's heavy, but Lord, you're bigger, you're stronger. I'm going to trust you through this. Help me to think through what do I need to do, and it would be great too if you'd help me navigate this to alleviate this. All of that is appropriate. What Jesus is saying is a sin is a little faith that bites nails. Oh, I don't know. If my kid doesn't get into the school, I don't think that they'll ever have a job. They won't get married, and I won't be having grandchildren, and we're going to live in the poor farm, and we're going to die penniless. Okay, Jesus says, don't do that. Believe in me. I'm sovereign. I've got this. Have faith. So we can, even with a big faith in God, we'll just use the term anxious, but it's not a sinful anxiety. It is a natural, human, normal response to something that is downright troubling. The issue is not that we can be anxious, to use that term. It's our faith in the anxiety.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I also think of Paul describing his testimony in 2 Corinthians 11, and he talks about, I've endured sleepless nights, I've gone with hunger, and then he adds to it at the very end, in addition to all this, is the daily concern I have for the churches. Yeah. And there's a stress right there. And what would you call that, Todd? Is that godly concern or ungodly?
That's, of course, that's normal. But now, Paul didn't say, I'm freaking out.
Right. No.
I think I'm going to quit being an apostle. This is just disaster. No. He had faith, he had confidence in the Lord, but he was troubled. He had concerns. Hey, I want this to, so I'm thinking about it. Maybe I could write a letter. Hey, what if we take the boat and land in that port? Hey, then I could, all of that is perfectly fine. The issue is my heart, which is always the issue.